What's up, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Duran Duran, back with another bonus track of Duran Duran's. We're going back to their 2015 album, Paper Gods. Again, this album made a huge impression on me. It really had a fantastic sound, and it, as I mentioned, when I bought the album on Amazon, there were very mixed reviews that I saw in the comments, and, not that I necessarily put, great stock in random comments on Amazon, like Marketplace or whatever, but ultimately, I am very happy to say that, I've come to see this as a brilliant installment in their catalog, and in no way do I think that, collaborating with a number of artists in any way sort of like sullied the sound or the quality of the album, far from it. But yeah, we're up to a bonus track called Valentine Stones. I'm very interested by that title. There's a contrast to it. There's sort of a dichotomy to it in terms of, Valentines, you think of hearts, you think of sort of like warm, loving organs, like tender things which have to be cared for and maintained and protected. Whereas stone is, the complete absence of life and warmth. It is the most lifeless physical sort of surface that, we think of here on Earth in our terrestrial environment. So to contrast Valentine with Stones is to at least right out of the gate and, prima facie, to sort of suggest the opposite extremes of emotional experience. To be stone-hearted on the one side means to be deadened by, whatever you've gone through, whatever experiences you've had, or perhaps as a sort of defensive strategic mechanism to avoid being hurt, you sort of limit the amount by which you feel the world, and thereby like limit the amount of hurt or vulnerability you have, though also by the same token limiting the amount of sort of ecstatic emotional experiences you may have, the amount of sort of emotional joy you may experience because you don't let any of that in, or a very little amount of that in. But yeah, so ultimately it suggests an emotional dichotomy or spectrum, or perhaps it could relate to a Valentine well-wish, or an action around the concept of Valentine's, which, in a modern idiom is sort of understood to be about relationships and the like romantic love within. So yeah, it could be about a sort of an action within the context of a romantic relationship, or Valentine's Day specifically, that amounts to like an emotional like boulder hurled at someone, at least psychologically, or in terms of their emotional status. So yeah, I feel like there's a few different ways you could go with it, but just again, like in terms of the simple phrase itself, I like the contrast of it. It's, it is oxymoronical, is I guess what I've been trying to say. It seems to be running in counter directions, even though they're brought together, which again, sometimes, if you force two concepts which are almost opposite of each other in tightly, they can actually work together. Shout out to the nuclear force. But no, let's get to it. This is Paper Gods, Valentine Stones on, or Duran Duran, Valentine Stones on their 2015 album Paper Gods. All right. We got our steady 4/4 beat. We got a bit of electrical grit. I like the groove of the tune. I like those little guitar hits. Sounds like, the reverse of the concept of a lady killer. It's like a man eater, like the goes through men like who become ultimately like tokens or trophies for her, but victims in a way. Maybe. But the narrator is saying like, you know, in a way I want you to turn around and come back to me, whatever, but I really don't want to be, you know, just one in a long list of guys this has happened to. Getting wicked and funky with that first hit of that synth. Yeah, I don't want to be under your thumb. It's definitely a danceable tune, I'll tell you that. And I like the sort of electrical grit at the low end. Like the wicked side of this tune. There's a brightness but also a shadowy side, and I particularly like the shadowy side of that. Yeah, that was cool. Like I said, very danceable. And you know, maybe I'm misreading the lyrics, but it, you know, from what I picked up on, the lines that I could hear more clearly, it does sound like a guy who's aware he might be in the sort of, you know, spider web of someone who doesn't necessarily have his greatest interests at mind, and he's conscious of, you know, I don't want to be, you know, like under your thumb or, you know, on a leash. I don't want to just be like one of a number of guys that you might call if you maybe feel like you might want to hang out. But he's also clearly like, you know, I want you to turn around and save me. I want you to turn on your charms and, you know, and rapture me again. So, yeah, I think, you know, like a lot of people perhaps who are swept up in infatuation, love, and or the allure of a physical relationship, you don't always think clearly. You don't always think, you know, consistently. You have like contradictory sort of thoughts and feelings going through your head, and which of course makes decision making in those types of situations so difficult. So yeah, I do think if I'm reading some of those lines right, it's, you know, about being in that sort of like limbo of not quite knowing where you stand, and, you know, not wanting to be taken advantage of, but also recognizing that maybe, you know, there is a special nature to this person, and, you know, I'd like to be part of it if I can, you know, work it in a way that is healthy for me. So yeah, that's kind of the feeling and the motifs that came to me, but do let me know if there's another interpretation or a, you know, a line that's particularly helpful in that regard. Let me know what you think of the Sonics. Let me know if that's a tune you can dance to. And yeah, I think we have at least one more. No, that's right, there's 6 total. And I think I already have access to them in one way or another. I just mentioned it before that when I downloaded these 4 from, I think Seb sent them to me, yeah, it was just 4 of the 6. But either way, like I said, we should do all of them eventually. The next one I'm going to do is Northern Lights. I think a couple of you have also mentioned that one, that's a particularly good bonus tune. So be excited to, you know, see what that one's about. Obviously, you know, it leads one to think about the auroras and in both very northern and very southern latitudes, which if you didn't know is because charged particles come out of the sun, they interact with our magnetic field, and like most magnetic fields, they have 2 poles, or it has 2 poles, so these charged particles are sort of like directed to the poles of very northern latitudes, very southern latitudes, and then when they interact with the molecules of our atmosphere, they kick them into higher energy states, but eventually they can't stay in that state for too long, so they have to give off energy, and they do it in the form of light. And so that's what we see when we see northern lights. We see like atmospheric molecules giving off energy after they have been supercharged by these charged particles or the solar wind. So yeah, I have no idea if it'll have anything to do with that. But yeah, there's a few other cultural references to the phrase Northern Lights. So yeah, we'll have to see if it has anything to do with any of those, or if it's sort of its own lyrical take on the phrase. But yeah, we'll get to that when we come back for that one. Let me know what you think about this. Other than that, I will see you next time. Peace.